The conflict in Ukraine has become a focal point of international attention, evolving into a complex war that encompasses deep historical grievances, national identity struggles, and geopolitical maneuvering. To understand the current state of affairs, it is crucial to delve into the historical context that has shaped this conflict. Ukraine's path to independence began with the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, when it declared its sovereignty and sought to establish a distinct national identity. However, this newfound independence came with challenges, including significant economic difficulties and a divided populace with differing allegiances, many in the West leaning towards Europe and NATO, while those in the East maintained a strong connection to Russia. This division laid the groundwork for future tensions and political instability. The seeds of conflict were sown in 2014, when Ukraine experienced widespread protests known as the Euromaidan movement, catalyzed by the then-President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to reject a trade agreement with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia. The protests culminated in Yanukovych's ousting, triggering Russia's annexation of Crimea. This event was characterized by a rapid military intervention and a controversial referendum that purportedly resulted in Crimea's integration into Russia. The annexation was met with international condemnation and led to sanctions against Russia from Western nations. Simultaneously, the eastern regions of Donetsk and Luhansk saw the emergence of pro-Russian separatist movements. These groups declared independence, leading to a protracted and brutal conflict that escalated into a full-blown war between Ukrainian forces and separatist militias, backed by Russian military support. The fighting resulted in thousands of casualties and a humanitarian crisis, with civilians caught in the crossfire. The situation deteriorated further in early 2022 when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Initially, many analysts anticipated a swift Russian victory, underestimating Ukraine's resolve and capability to defend its territory. However, the Ukrainian military, alongside a mobilized civilian population, showcased remarkable resilience and tactical ingenuity. The conflict has evolved into a war characterized by asymmetric warfare, where smaller, agile units employ guerrilla tactics against a larger conventional force. This approach has leveraged Ukraine's intimate knowledge of its terrain and a deep-seated sense of national identity and purpose. The international response to the conflict has been significant, with Western nations rallying to provide substantial military and humanitarian support to Ukraine. Advanced weaponry, including anti-tank missiles and precision artillery systems, have been crucial in leveling the battlefield. This military assistance has not only bolstered Ukraine's defensive capabilities, but has also served as a powerful symbol of international solidarity against Russian aggression. As the conflict raged on, the Eastern Front, particularly the Donbass region, became a focal point for intense combat. Key cities, including Bakhmut and Mariupol, transformed into symbols of the brutal struggle for control. The war has devolved into a devastating war of attrition, marked by heavy losses on both sides and extensive destruction of infrastructure. Civilians have suffered tremendously, facing displacement, trauma, and loss of life, while urban centers have been reduced to rubble. As 2023 unfolded, Ukraine initiated counteroffensives aimed at reclaiming territories lost to Russian forces, particularly in the south. The battles for cities and strategic locations underscored the significance of logistics and supply chains in contemporary warfare. While Ukrainian forces achieved some tactical victories, the progress was often hard-fought and costly. Russian forces, adapting to the shifting dynamics, employed heavy artillery and fortified positions to counter Ukrainian advances, resulting in a stalemate in many areas. The humanitarian impact of the war has been catastrophic. Millions of Ukrainians have been displaced, with many seeking refuge in neighboring countries. The destruction of homes, schools, and essential services has created an urgent need for humanitarian assistance. International organizations and NGOs have mobilized resources to provide aid, but the scale of the crisis has outstripped available support. Winter months have presented particularly harsh challenges, with many people lacking basic heating and access to essential services. Economically, the war has had profound implications for both Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine's economy has suffered severe contraction, exacerbated by infrastructure damage and disrupted agricultural production. The agricultural sector, a critical pillar of Ukraine's economy, has been significantly impacted, leading to concerns over food security. In response, the international community has provided financial aid packages aimed at stabilizing the Ukrainian economy and facilitating recovery efforts. On the Russian side, the sanctions imposed by Western nations have led to trade isolation and a decline in foreign investment. In an attempt to mitigate these effects, Russia has sought to pivot towards non-Western markets, particularly in Asia. This shift represents a strategic realignment, but also poses risks as it seeks to cultivate relationships with countries like China and India, which may have their own geopolitical interests. The geopolitical ramifications of the conflict extend far beyond Ukraine and Russia. NATO has experienced a resurgence, with member states re-evaluating their defense strategies and increasing military readiness. The war has prompted discussions about NATO's expansion, with countries like Finland and Sweden applying for membership, driven by heightened security concerns. This shift underscores a significant transformation in the European security landscape and has led to increased tensions between NATO and Russia. As the war drags on, prospects for a diplomatic resolution remain grim. Numerous attempts at peace talks have failed, largely due to fundamental disagreements over territorial integrity and sovereignty. Ukraine insists that any negotiations must prioritize the restoration of its territorial integrity, including Crimea, while Russia seeks to solidify its claims over occupied territories. This impasse highlights the complexities of the conflict, where national sovereignty and territorial claims are intertwined with broader geopolitical interests. The war has sparked global debates about security, defense, and the principles of international law. Countries around the world are reassessing their defense postures in light of the conflict, and public opinion regarding military involvement and support for Ukraine has become increasingly contentious. In the United States, for example, discussions about the sustainability of military aid to Ukraine are ongoing, reflecting domestic challenges and differing perspectives on foreign policy. The conflict has also intensified rivalries among global powers, contributing to a new era of confrontation reminiscent of the Cold War. The deterioration of relations between the West and Russia has raised concerns about the potential for broader conflicts. Meanwhile, Russia's efforts to forge alliances with countries outside the Western sphere indicate a realignment of global partnerships and influence. As the situation continues to evolve, the humanitarian crisis deepens, and the prospects for peace remain distant. The conflict poses significant threats to regional stability and global security, with long-lasting implications for international relations. The resilience of the Ukrainian people, the unwavering support from the international community, and the strategic interests of major powers will continue to shape the trajectory of this war. The enduring conflict has highlighted the complexities of modern warfare, where technology, international alliances, and public sentiment intertwine to influence outcomes. The situation remains fluid, with the potential for escalation or, conversely, for diplomatic breakthroughs that could lead to a semblance of peace. The long-term consequences of this conflict will undoubtedly shape the geopolitical landscape for years to come, as nations grapple with the realities of power dynamics, national sovereignty, and the ongoing struggle for stability in an increasingly multipolar world. The narrative of Ukraine's fight for survival has become emblematic of broader struggles against authoritarianism and for self-determination, resonating across borders and inspiring movements for freedom and democracy worldwide.